Um,
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Super League. I'm here with Gerard Fabiano, who actually just faced one of these competitors. We're about to see David Ochoa against Roland Chang, but Gerard, you just battled against David.
Hey Louis, how you doing? Yeah, I did. I lost pretty bad, I would say. I won the second game, but game one, I just needed to land a certain turn so I could have played Tinker. And then game three, I just kind of flooded out, and it was my deck wasn't that great. I kind of just made a deck that I like playing and I like the cards, but overall, I think Ochoa had a better deck, and he's a great player, so it's good to see him move on to the next round.
Yeah, your deck did look like you added a bunch of cards you liked. That is kind of. I mean, I've played those decks before, and then in game one, yeah, when you cast Brainstorm and then didn't play a land, that was, you're always in that. It's a rough situation.
Well, I actually had a land in my hand,
Well,
but
you
the
had the
whole
Underground Sea, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I wanted to hold the underground so I could play dig through time. And then I actually digged into Tinker and Mox Ruby. So my plan was to draw land and then find either Voltaic Key because I ended up drawing
The Time Vault.
the Time Vault, or just draw land and just tinker out a Worm Coil. But I didn't draw land, and it was just over by then.
Yeah, and the workshop deck doesn't give you a ton of breathing room. If you miss a land drop, all of a sudden they just kill a land or play another sphere or whatever, and then you're just like another step behind.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Yeah.
speaking of workshops, we've got David Ochoa playing us Roland Chang, and let's take a look at the bracket real quick.
Yeah, bracket would be a great idea. So it
So
looks like this match right here is pretty important because obviously it's a elimination match. Um, so who do you think's favored right here?
I having played from Roland's side a lot. I've played the Delver decks against the workshop decks a lot. I would rather be on the workshop side. They just their deck is intrinsically set up to take advantage of the matchup, but it is close. I mean, Young Pyromancer is good, and Roland does certainly have some sideboard options. And then the winner of this match is going to go ahead and play Dave Williams. It looks, or the winner of Dave plus the next match. So every match except one is an elimination match, since we're kind of working our way through the losers bracket here,
Yeah,
and getting to see who's going to face the 2-0. So
yeah. So personally, I think Roland might have a slight favorite, a slight advantage here, just because I kind of like his style of deck, and of like what Pakula was saying before. A lot of people came with a lot of workshop hate, but then again, workshop is still a great deck, and sometimes all the hate doesn't even matter.
yeah, definitely. And let's just go ahead and take a look at Roland's deck here.
Okay.
So one of the cards he has, which actually does kind of support your theory that he's ahead, is that Delver of Secrets is a really good card. Some of the decks, like Sam Black's deck, just playing the Mentors, the decks with Delver do a lot better because sometimes you just sneak out a turn on Delver and just deal 21 damage with it against a workshop deck.
Yeah, and also the workshop deck plays Ancient Tomb, so that could really compound the damage right there. And yeah, I do think Delver's one of his strongest cards in this matchup, and he also has a really nice sideboard. Just looking at the four Ingot Chewers, he also has a Pulverize, which I'm sure he's going to bring in, and he's probably also going to bring in the Null Rod. So at
Yeah,
least six cards, right?
yeah, definitely, and especially since you've got cards like Mental Misstep in your deck that don't do anything, and Cabal Therapy is fairly weak just because they're taxing your mana so much.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it is still a very close matchup. It's gonna
Yeah.
like a lot of vintage matches. Basically, any involving Wish's Workshop, the die roll is a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
Getting to play a sphere, a Trinisphere, what have you.
yeah. I mean, even with the restriction of Chalice, it still doesn't matter. I mean, the deck is still a great deck. It goes from being probably the best deck to still being maybe the best deck. But also looking at Roland's deck list, I think Sudden Shock could be a decent card just because of the Arcbound Ravager. So maybe kind of get that before Ocho would have any chance to pump it up or whatnot.
Yeah,
So
the
at least
interaction
six
between
cards.
Sudden Shock and Ravagers is pretty interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I mean even with like Mishra's Workshop, right? Because they might activate Workshop, and the other Workshop could pump it on the off chance of that happening, and then Sudden Shock. I mean, it's just like a random card, a seventh sideboard card he'll probably bring in. But yeah, it should be pretty good. Is Ochoa going to be sideboarding anything crazy, you think, or no?
Let's take a look at Ochoa's deck list. He's got Dismember, which can kill Young Pyromancer and can take down Delver, and then Wormcoil Engine I've actually found to be decent, even though you run the risk of Dak Faden. It does get around Ingot Chewer and Pulverize fairly nicely.
Yeah, that's definitely true. What do you think about Duplicate? Could that possibly be any good or no?
The problem is you don't want too many cards that cost 6 or more mana, and Triskelion is just like a better duplicate.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to bring the duplicate unless he really doesn't like some of the slots in his deck.
Okay, yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. I think Worm Coil is definitely great, and this member is going to be good just to, try to stop that early Delver pressure or Young Pyromancer because that could easily get out of hand, especially with, Cabal Therapy and all the cantrips that Roland has.
Definitely.
So,
And one of the things that is funny is that because of Hangerback Walker, I actually think David Ochoa gets a little bit of value too against Ingot Chewer and Pulverize, like just like the Worm Coil. It's an artifact that's resistant to artifact kill, which is pretty nice.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, Hangerbat Walker, definitely one of the new additions, since its release. Definitely made a nice appearance in Standard, obviously, but also in Vintage, which probably surprised some people, to be honest.
Yeah, I certainly didn't expect to see it as widely played as it was in Standard, and then much less it showing up in Vintage. Though, the funny thing is, anytime you take an artifact that's decent, the fact that you have a Mishra's Workshop in the format means that it kind of costs 2 mana less than it would normally. So Hangerback, yeah, makes sense. You can play it for 2 quite often.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I think our players are ready, and this should be an
Already?
exciting match. All
And it
right.
looks like Roland won the die roll, which is a pretty big game, especially since his hand is quite good at a turn
Yeah.
one Pyromancer with a bunch of 1 drops. And now that Chalice is restricted, a hand of Preordain and Lightning Bolt and Delver looks a lot better than it used to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, his hand looks great. Turn one, Young Pyromancer, and then he's able to, next turn bolt anything that Ochoa might play or preordain, and all of a sudden he's getting, a bunch of tokens, and I'm sure he's going to drop a Delver next turn as well.
This is one of those games where had Webb been on the play, he would have had a pretty impressive opening hand with Thorn. But even on the draw, I kind of like Ochoa's hand because he's got 2 2-drop creatures and Umezawa's Jite. Jite could be insane this game. If he lands one Jite hit, that's almost just game right there.
Yeah, do you think Ochoa is going to go turn one Ravager and Revoker, or do you think he's going to try to get that Thorn down?
My guess is against a young Pyro and 2 mana. Oh, it looks like Roland's actually going to play Delver. Well, that might change things, but I think Revoker is going to come down to name Mox Ruby one way or the other.
Okay.
But it's interesting now because if there's a young Pyro in play, my guess is that David would have played Revoker and Ravager. But now, David has some incentive to just go like land Mox
Oh,
Mana Crypt,
wow.
play Thorn first, then play Revoker naming Mox Ruby. It protects his Revoker from Lightning Bolt and really chokes Roland's mana.
Yeah, definitely. And as you were talking, you just drew a second Mox. So now he's got Mox, Mana Crypt. Yeah, I think you're definitely right with your suggestion, and I think this actually looks really good for Ochoa, even though Chang had a great opening hand.
Yeah, so I like leading with the Thorn, forcing out the
Yep.
Lightning Bolt, because also the Ruby implies a Lightning Bolt here, and then Revokering. This is awesome.
Yeah, definitely really good.
David Ochoa is no stranger to workshops. He's actually played workshop decks, over 10 years since he's played a ton of vintage.
Yeah, wasn't Ochoa originally like a vintage specialist? Didn't he play a lot of vintage online and stuff?
It was more that back in around 2004 to 2007 or so, both he and I played a ton of vintage, and that's actually kind of how both of us got into playing in PTQs and playing on the PTs. We just played
Oh
vintage
yeah.
tournaments every weekend, and eventually decided we wanted to play some higher stakes tournaments. But yeah, we both played a lot of vintage.
Yeah, vintage is just such a great format, so much fun. Get to play all the cards that you kind of grew up with. So that's why I love it so much as well. So it looks like a great board position for Ochoa. Chang now has an Underground Sea to add to his hand from last turn. So he's obviously has to start off with the Bolt here, right?
The problem is the Revoker's cut off red. So at this
Oh
point,
wow, you're right. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Roland's got basically one option, which is Underground
Preordain.
Sea cast Preordain, because you have to pay 2 mana for it, and then he's enforced to doing nothing else this turn.
Yeah, really not that good for Roland.
And at that point, David could play the Jite, but the funny thing is Roland may attack here because trading 1 for 2 is actually good for Roland because he's the aggressor. But that's going to give David the opportunity to go Jite, equip, attack, kill your Delver, and then and then just win with a 2-1 with a GT on it. I don't think as
Yeah,
powerful as vintage decks are, a 2-1 with a GT can actually just beat the Pyromancer deck.
yeah. It is really crazy because, like you said, the power of vintage. But lots of times the games come down to cards that you wouldn't even expect, and the game sometimes lasts like 10 or 11 turns.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. People who don't play vintage think it's all turn one kills. People who do know that it's very, very few turn one
Yeah,
kills.
it's really not. Lots of times vintage is kind of just like playing a cube draft, just
Yeah,
with
it's
really
very
good
similar.
decks.
Sometimes,
Yeah,
yeah, sometimes people just have like random vindicates in their deck, and who knows what.
Ashiok's,
Yeah, the chat really wanted you to draw Ashiok, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. All right. So, does Ochoa need anything else, or is everything that he needs to win this game he has already?
I think Ochoa would be a favorite here if he didn't get to draw cards.
Okay. Yeah.
So, which is a pretty strong statement, but I
Yeah.
mean, Roland can't cast a spell this turn, and Roland can't really beat a GT very easily, even if he gets to bolt next turn off the polluted delta.
Another thorn.
The Mishra's factory is very capable of picking up the GT.
Yeah. So a second thorn. Although, yeah, he's just going to equip the revoker right now, take out the delver. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it's going to be super tough for Chang to get out of this one. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's extremely unlikely.
yeah. The fact that David was able to play turn one Thorn Revoker, turn two GT Equip is a testament to how strong his hand was. I mean, this is about as strong as it gets for a non-workshop hand, and it's even better than most actual workshop hands. So, this is the start you want. I guess this is why you put GT in your deck. It's not a very commonly played vintage card.
Wait, isn't Ochoa playing three sword and fire ice, or did I see that
Yeah,
wrong?
he came fully equipped. I mean, this is
Yeah.
the matchup that he's looking for.
Do we have a pun counter for you or no?
I tried, but our production team hates puns, so
I don't think I'll be able to come up with one, so you'll have the job yourself. All right, so I guess he gets to play it. I don't even know what he could do here.
well, Roland can lightning bolt the Revoker, and then it actually turns on the Ruby, so it would let him play a Pyro, but that just
Our,
dies to GT, and then the fact that the
yeah,
factory can pick up the GT makes it really tough.
yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure next turn Ochoa is definitely going to get down that second thorn just to make things even worse for Roland.
Yeah, it's possible that because the Revoker's dying, that Webb is going to want to activate Factory, equip GT, and just attack and just be content with that. But if he draws like a Mitchell's Workshop, then the Thorn's coming out. Or maybe even the Ravager, who knows?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It does come up to Ochoa's draw, but regardless, it looks really great for him.
Yeah. And Roland deciding whether he wants to just throw out a Pyromancer, which he knows is just going to die. It's a pretty unpleasant thing to do, but I don't know if he really has a better play.
Yeah, that thorn is really a thorn in Roland's side.
There we go. See, it was a little like too awkward coming out the phrasing because you were just like
Okay,
really going for it. But once you get used to it, just the more and more, then it gets easier. That
okay.
was good
So,
though. That was good. I give it a
okay,
solid B.
B. Okay, all right, that's good coming from you.
Yeah.
All right, so Ochoa will draw. Ooh, another factory.
Yeah.
He's really assembling something there.
Yeah. I mean, his deck's really working like that. This is exactly what he was looking for.
Yeah, basically with Jitte in play, all Ochoa really wants is more creatures, and he has Ravager and a second factory, so that's
Yeah.
more than enough.
Yeah, I mean, Ochoa is actually just completely ravaging Roland here. Like GT is killing all his creatures. Thorn is making it so he can't cast any of his spells. Like this is kind of a bloodbath.
Yeah, definitely. So is he playing the Thorn or is he not playing the Thorn this turn?
I think you do really want to get counters on the GT. So I would lean towards just going activate factory, equip GT, kill the Pyromancer, attack, get counters. Then you can just play land Ravager because it's not stopped by the Thorn.
What about kill Pyromancer, play Thorn and Ravager? Good or bad?
I like getting counters on it better because Roland at 4 mana can still play a lot of his cards. I think that one of the ways you lose is like another Pyromancer coming down. But honestly, I think Webb would win with either line. I would lean towards putting counters on my GT, but I think either line is actually great.
Okay. Yeah, this is pretty exciting. You usually don't get to see two really great vintage players play two different decks that are really dominant in the format.
Yeah. And it looks like Webb likes your line better since
Okay.
he's just slamming another thorn.
Yeah, I mean, he could always get the counters next turn, and
Yeah.
he doesn't really need the counters now since Roland just has nothing in play. I mean, what are you really afraid of if you're Ochoa right here?
Honestly, nothing. But I guess the second thorn does make it a lot harder for Roland to string a bunch of spells together. Though even with one thorn in play, all his cantrips are just really bad.
Yeah.
So Roland does get to go Pyromancer plus Gush here, but that's still not really going to be enough to save him.
Yeah, I feel like what Pakula was saying before, where Sam's deck was kind of just like super streamlined and didn't really have a plan B. I feel like Roland doesn't really have a plan B either, right? It's either Delver or Young Pyromancer, not too much else for him to kind of win with. It'd be cool if he just had some like random combo in there.
Yeah, I think post board games it's much more like that because post board not only can you always just dig to pulverize, which is the great equalizer, then there's also four ingot chewers in your deck, so you can just keep finding removal spells. But in game one, Thorn's going to stay on the battlefield the whole time, and it just makes your deck so bad. Plus, Roland gets to draw cards like Mental Misstep, which basically don't do anything. They counter a lone Soul Ring.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I didn't play Mental Misstep, just because I thought there would be a lot of workshops.
Yeah, there were a decent amount. I would have guessed there was either going to be two or three workshop decks, and it ended up it looked like there being two.
Yeah. Triskelion, that's a pretty nice draw. Not really needed, but I
Yeah,
feel like Ochoa is wasting all his good draws this game when he already has
yeah.
game one.
I don't know if he knows anything about conserving luck, but this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, you got to talk to him about that.
Yeah.
So here, probably just equipped the Ravager,
I,
or just
I I would lean towards activating and equipping on one of the factories. I think because that way, I guess Roland can't even cast a bolt no matter what. So yeah,
yeah,
at that point you could just equip the factory and attack because the Pyromancer can't really successfully block it. You don't really want to. You want to keep your Ravager in play. And you don't want to sack artifacts to it. So I think he's just going to attack with the factory here.
yeah. Okay, that's fair. I guess like there's no artifact that he would want to sack realistically. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess he could get rid of like one of the mana sources, but it's just not needed at all.
So I have to ask a question. Now with the new mulligan rule, do you mulligan more than you used to, or has the percentage changed? Is it still is just straight zero?
It's usually straight zero, and like if I do ever mulligan, it's like so rare that I forget to scry anyway. So it's just like doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I guess that I don't know what I expected, but
Yeah. Okay, so he's gushing before blocks.
yeah. And
So he
at this point, Roland could double block the factory to force David to either lose the factory or lose the Ravager, which is fine. It's the best he can do, but it doesn't put Roland in a position to win the game from here.
Yeah, as long as Ochoa never loses those thorns, I mean, I don't really know what Chan could do.
The problem is Thorns mean that Cheng's best cards are Delver and Pyromancer, and Jite means those cards don't do anything. So it's going to be really hard to come back from here.
Yeah. And now, if Ochoa wins this, he'll be playing against who? Is it Williams?
I believe the winner of Dave and the other one of the other matches, but Randy can tell us because he's in the
Okay.
chat.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves. It's only game one, and Ochoa didn't win yet, but it looks really good for him.
It's true. I mean, he's gonna Roland's gonna have to win a game on the draw, which is always tough. And
Yeah, definitely.
so and that's even assuming he wins game two here.
Yeah. So Roland draws. It's so crazy how Thorn or just certain cards in Vintage just like shuts off somebody's like their entire deck.
Well, I mean, when your deck is built on 2 mana or 0 mana can't draw cards and 1 mana draw cards, adding one to the cost of all your spells just kind of ruins you.
Yeah. All right. So Roland just did nothing that turn.
And Randy's confirmed that the winner of this plays the winner of Williams versus the winner of Ole plus Reed.
Okay. All right. So a lot of good matches still left to be played, even
Oh, yeah.
tonight. Yeah, this is only match three, so we have two more rounds after this. Are you staying on for commentary anymore after this, or are you only doing this round?
No, I'm just doing this round.
Okay.
I said I'd only do commentary if Arcbound Ravager was involved in the match.
That's a fair request. Okay, so there's a
So,
tangle wire.
which Roland's kind of forced to counter here, but
Yeah,
it's still not going to get him out of this.
yeah. Yeah, tangle wire is one of those cards where you never really want to counter, but if you don't, then you could just fall behind and just kind of get pushed out of the game.
Oh, I've definitely lost games to Tanglewire when I just should have countered it, but I'm like, hey, it's just going to run out in a couple turns. You don't need to counter it.
Yeah, it's going to fade away, and that's going to be it. But yeah, you end up just losing to it. So Roland's still at a pretty high life total, but that should change pretty soon. It's probably going to be just a 2-turn clock if
Technically,
Ocho wants it to
Webb could
be.
just go all in and kill him next turn, but I don't think he's going to do that.
Yeah, I mean he can just sack all his artifacts, but yeah, more than likely he'll probably do it over the course of 2 turns, or
Look
maybe
at
he'll
that.
just go for
GTA can give +8/+8, then get sacrificed. It's like an additional +1/+1.
it.
I guess if you can leave the 2 thorns in play and Roland only has 2 mana, then you
Then you might
kind
as
of know
well.
that it's going to work.
Yeah, as long as there's no like simian spirit guide action or whatnot. Okay, so there's a sudden shock. We talked about that. He has an additional one in his sideboard. I really want Ocho to be at 2 life, and the game just keeps going on, and we know that he has sudden shock.
That would be awesome. If I
Yeah,
was Roland, I would definitely do that.
yeah. Type, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom, be right back. Ocho's like, okay.
And even in this case, Sudden Shock could kind of get around Ravager GTA a little bit, but it's just Roland can't cast it. He's 2 mana away from casting Sudden Shock.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. All right, so hopefully Ochoa draws something bad because he really needs to save his luck. But once
Oh yeah,
again,
this is brutal. He just drew a Lodestone Golem. Like
another good card.
he's not listening to us at all. I guess he's
Yeah,
probably not listening to us at all. But
yeah. Maybe if we talk really loud,
yeah,
he'll be able to hear us. How far does Ochoa live from you? Just about
uh,
like
he lives like 1,200 miles from me or something.
that's not that bad. I think it's possible. Get a big megaphone or something.
Yeah. Well, one thing to note though is that Ochoa is playing a very anti-Delver deck list. He's got Jite, Sword of Fire and Ice, Triskelion. These are cards that are really you put these cards in your deck if you expect to play against a lot of young Pyromancers. So
Okay.
he's getting the matchup he wants, and I mean he also played against it last week and actually lost to it though. So obviously it's not a cakewalk, but that is the matchup he wants.
Yeah. All right. So it looks that he is going to just finish him off this turn, right?
A, it goes 9. Yeah, that's enough without really worrying about it. I mean, you might as well. I mean, Webb could. Yeah, there's nothing he can worry about because the GTA by itself after pumping makes the Ravager 10. You can sack everything but 1 thorn just to make sure there's no, you know, I don't even know what 0 mana card can happen here.
Yeah, I think Ochoa is bound to do it.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to go for it here. I guess he could even leave both thorns in play if he animates the factory and sacrifices it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Ravager's a beast. Like it's finishing this game.
Yeah. So okay. So it looks like Ochoa is going to be up the first game. Roland will be on the play game 2, which you say is really important, right?
Yeah, Roland was on the play this game though, and Webb kind of navigated Roland's potentially very good opening hand well. So that was impressive, and if Webb gets the draw that can do that, then clearly he can win games on the draw.
Do you think the game would have played out any differently if Roland decided to go turn 1 Young Pyromancer, or would it have been the same thing?
I think Webb would still be advantaged there, but it would have required I think a different line of play. My guess is that he goes turn 1 Ravager plus Revoker. He's trying to set up the turn 2 Jite hit, which would have been a little more difficult without a Thorn in play. But either way, I think Webb was ahead there.
Okay. All right. So looking at the sideboard, we talked about what Roland would probably bring in, those 6 or 7 cards, and you said Ochoa is probably going to bring in those 4 or 5 cards between the Dismembers and the Wormcoils.
That's my assumption. Ochoa brought in Crucible against Ole, but that's because Ole had Wastelands in his deck, and I don't think that he's going to do that, against Roland here. So my
Yeah.
guess is Roland improves more, especially since Nora does shut down all the equipment and the Triskelions and the Ravagers and whatnot. But Webb is still in pretty good shape. Like overall, I think Webb is favored in the matchup, but post board, I think Roland might be a little bit ahead on the play and a little behind on the draw.
Yeah, for someone in the chat, they asked who Webb was. Do you want to explain how he got his nickname and who is actually Webb?
So David Ochoa is Webb. I have a really hard time calling him anything but Webb because I've called him that for like 15 years. But it's because of Webster's Dictionary, because he just always had the answer to everything. So everyone's like, "What are you just are you just Webster's Dictionary?" And everyone just started calling him Webb. So he's also known as the Ocho or David or Ochoa. So he's got more names than most people.
Does he still have his mustache, or did he shave it?
He had more mustaches than most people too, but currently he does not have one.
Okay. Did you ever have a mustache?
Yes, I did. I'm not going to claim it was a great one, but it was maybe the best one.
Did it have anything to do with your alter ego?
Garvis L. Scott.
Yeah, and you were a police officer, true or false?
Yeah, I was in character for Grand Prix Vegas, which was actually pretty funny because the convention center was like filming this documentary about the event because they were like, "Wow, this is the biggest Magic event ever. We're going to do that." And they interviewed me before the event, and I was just like normal or whatever. And then I showed up with the mustache. They're like, "What is going on? Why did you do this?" And they're trying to have like a semi-serious thing, and I'm just like there.
Okay, so it looks like they're just about ready. And let's see what happens. Hopefully there's no mulligans. Hopefully it's a really good game.
That's what we always hope for, and I guess you just want good games, which is why you never mulligan.
Yeah. This. All right, so we see about almost his full hand. So let's look at Roland's hand first. 2 sources of mana, 2 therapies. His hand's pretty good. He's almost certainly going to keep this hand.
He is, but it is really awkward that if he cracks Tarn for red, he can't cast therapies, and if he cracks Tarn for basic mountain, then he's on Mountain plus Mock Sapphire. Basically, Roland has no action. I really don't like Cabal Therapy in this matchup, and having 2 in your opening hand here, when you have to get Underground Sea, which you basically can't get because it cuts you off of red, makes me pretty unhappy with this hand. If I'm Roland, I could actually see mulliganing this from Roland here.
Does he play Badlands or no Badlands?
I don't believe he has. Let me check real quick.
If he had Badlands, this would be a good time for a Badlands.
But he can't be playing Badlands, I don't think. He's got Gushes in his deck, so...
Yeah, okay, that's true.
Yeah, he doesn't have Badlands in his deck.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe this is a mulligan?
I think I would mulligan this hand and then sideboard out therapies, but since that's not legal, I would just start by mulliganing the hand.
Well, you could almost sideboard therapies if it's your top card and you're scrying. You could scry it to the bottom after your mulligan.
Yeah, yeah. This hand's much better. It's certainly keepable. This hand can... At this point, you could get greedy. You could just consult for like a Ancestral, or you could just consult for Young Pyromancer and have turn 2 Pyromancer with Gush Bolt in hand. Webb's hand, I think, is good. It's reliant on this Metalworker surviving, but even if it doesn't, he can play a Thorn and then a Sword. And if Metalworker survives, he has turn 2 Triskelion.
Yeah, which is going to be great. Now, if he Demonic Consultations and the recall is in the top 6, he just loses the game, right?
No, he has to wait till he's going to draw a card, then he loses the game.
Okay.
no Lab Maniacs in Roland's deck.
Yeah. Demonic Consultation, that's a crazy card.
Luis Neiman in the chat wants him to consult for Humpus Wumpus. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Nah, I'm not sure.
So I'll be honest. When I was even before I'd played in a single PTQ, I read about that consultation. I'm like, oh, this Magic Pro named Gerard consulted for Humpus Wumpus. What does this mean? This is before I'd ever played like a sanctioned event. I was reading about you doing that, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because I knew you for like 3 or 4 years before I actually met you, just through Magic Online.
yeah. I remember we drafted against each other a number of times. Back when you could do that, and then looks like Webb did actually bring in Crucible Worlds. Man, he really likes bringing in those Crucibles, even though this is not the match where I would expect that to happen.
So is he consultating for a Forcible?
The problem is if you name Forcible, it seems like it's pretty hard to win this game. I might get greedy and just name Young Pyromancer here. You can just play a Pyromancer turn 2 through the Thorn, and then just hope that your Bolt plus Gush next turn is good enough.
Yeah.
Oh, he consulted for Ingot Chewer. It's like consulting for Force of Will with one turn delay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's fair. Do you like Ochoa not going Metalworker and going Thorn or what?
I I think I would have just played the Metalworker turn one, but this is working out better for him. So maybe he could certainly be right here.
Yeah.
My inclination is just to play the Metalworker because the problem is Thorn doesn't really stop Bolt anyway. Bolt's pretty cheap, but I would be happy just running out the high risk play of Metalworker.
Yeah. Oh, maybe Ochoa kind of wants to like pace out Roland by making him like always do something on his turn when he doesn't want to, and not really give him a chance to play Young Pyromancer or a threat. That could be a possibility. Because if the game goes long, Ochoa is most likely going to win.
I think that's true because of cards like Sword of Fire and Ice and Triskelion, which are just if any of those resolve, Roland just has a really hard time beating them. Aside from Norod does help a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if like Ignature will be replaced one day with something better. Because it's
Yeah,
been like the staple cyber card for a while now.
it's funny because it doesn't look very good, but the fact that it gets around Thorn and then it getting around Chalice is less relevant now, but it's still just the most efficient card, and that you can cast it later and have it be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is funny. It like Chris when he was doing commentary with Roland earlier, he was talking about how uh, Vintage has these weird cards that no other formats play. Ingature definitely is one of those cards.
Yeah, so this is pretty nice for Roland because he could play the Chewer. Oh, did he play
Looks
another
like he thought
C?
for a while. I think he's just going to cast Ponder here. He could have
Okay.
gone Chewer plus Ponder, but by pondering now, it lets him chew something else later. Ooh, there's a Pulverize.
Yeah. Well, Pulverize, he needs to sacrifice 2 mountains, correct?
He does. So he'd have to have his Volcanic survive for a turn and then get a second one to sacrifice it.
Yeah, I wonder if Roland made this play because he's worried about Wasteland from Ochoa and doesn't want to lose his Volcanic.
Ooh, there's an Ancestral too. So I suspect he's not shuffling. And Ingature. Well, Ingature and Ancestral Pulverize is about as perfect as you can get. So this is looking a lot better for Roland than it was a turn ago here.
Yeah. We'll see what Ochoa could do, see what his draw step's going to bring him. I mean, a Wasteland would be great right here.
Wasteland would be awesome right here, yeah.
Yeah, especially would go really nice with that Crucible.
Another Thorn effect would be pretty good. A Tanglewire would actually be just backbreaking. Because
Yeah,
Tanglewire
Tanglewire.
would give Webb
Ooh,
enough
that.
time to get everything going.
So the Mox. Mox doesn't. Well, Mox just gives him the extra mana. He could pay 1 mana to cast the Mox, and
Hmm.
he'll still have enough mana to play the Metalworker. So probably Mox Metalworker here.
Yeah, Mox is it doesn't add mana this turn, but it's free essentially. It does
Yeah.
mean that Webb can play a Triskelion next turn. So I think that Webb's going to play like Mox Metalworker land here, and then because if Metalworker survives, he's got plenty of mana, and if it doesn't, he can still just play Trike next turn.
Yeah. Yeah, like actually watching the Workshops deck, it is just like a really great deck. It's like smooth, it has a lot of power to it, and it's overall consistent.
Yeah, it's got a lot of really good cards in it, and then if it draws the card Mitchell's Workshop, it just fires it, on all cylinders here.
Yeah.
The fact that he's got, David has a Black Lotus that he played turn one and can use every turn.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a time where like Mishra's Workshop was probably like a $5 card or even less, and nobody probably ever thought it would be this good.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when it was restricted and worth almost nothing many, many, many years ago, and then of course it got unrestricted, and then it started, climbing, and all of a sudden it's like, well, it turns out Mitchell's Workshop is a card. So, unfortunately for Roland, he only can cast one of his red spells this turn, and so basically he gets to go Ingot Chewer plus Ancestral. So the question is, do you Ingot Chewer to Thorn or do you Ingot Chewer to Metalworker? It seems like you'd want to kill the Metalworker here, though. If he's
I
trying to set up a Pulverize, Metalworker could actually be a fine card to let happen.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of interesting. So he does go after the Metal Worker.
Oh, and he does it with a Bolt, so he actually can't cast anything else unless he wants to like fire off a Gush, which at least protects his lands from Wasteland.
Hmm. Yeah, I would have thought he would have played the Chewer and then the Recall, but
Yeah, that was
maybe
my assumption as well.
yeah. But I mean, Roland like knows his deck really well, so he probably has a nice plan set up.
I think he wanted to kill the Metalworker, but didn't want to use an Ingot Chewer on it. Like he wanted to save Ingot Chewer for a non-creature artifact because Bolt can only kill really like Metalworkers and Lodestone Golems.
So do you think like Roland's like really worried about the equipment, and that's what he wants to save it for?
That's what it seems like.
Okay.
Ooh, Webb's gonna get in for 3 here. Just get a little value.
So
The cost Roland's paying by doing this play though is he has an ancestral in hand that he hasn't cast yet,
yeah,
and if he doesn't kill Thorn, it still costs 2 mana. So he basically used a ton of left a ton of mana on the table there. He could have spent
yeah.
mana much more efficiently, and so by not doing that, he ended up kind of paying a cost that we'll see if it ends up biting him here.
Yeah, that's one of like the big things in Magic is like mana efficiency. Like, should I just use all my mana this turn, but it's not maybe the best play, or should I just do this one thing because I think it's a better play?
And there Roland essentially spent 3 mana on a lightning bolt because he wanted to use the flexibility. So now he's forced into Ingot Chewing again. The question is, do you kill the Metalworker? Webb's on 6 mana, so Metalworker might not be as scary, but Metalworker plus equipment is something that you have to be worried about.
Yeah, I think he could probably just kill the Thorn here. Is it too bad to kill the Thorn and then play Recall?
I don't think that's too bad, no. Especially since if you kill Thorn and then play Recall, you could then draw another red for Ingot Chewer. Actually, you could just Recall first and see where he's
Yeah,
at.
yeah, I was just about to say that. So yeah, that's exactly what he did. He recalls first. I guess we'll see if he draws a mountain. So he does draw the mountain in the form of a polluted delta.
So Roland now has access to triple Ingot Chewer. Pulverize is not looking great here because if Roland casts Pulverize, he just can't cast all his Ingot Chewers, so he might as well just go with the Ingot Chewers.
Yeah, and he's going to go after the Metalworker, correct?
I would assume so, yeah.
Okay.
So the funny thing is here, had Roland started by killing Thorn, then he would be able to cast Time Walk this turn if he wanted to. So Roland keeps not killing the Thorn, which I'm not saying is wrong, but it is, again, he's got another unspent mana here. He's not using it this turn. So Roland is continuously ending up with mana that he didn't end up using. So you only get to play a certain amount of spells per game. We'll see if he ends up running out of the time to play all those spells.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like the game shifted in Roland's favor now. I could still see Ochoa winning with the 2 factories, but it does seem like Chang's probably a favorite right here.
I would agree. Webb is going to up the pressure by playing a sword, which we assume is going to get Ingot Chewered. If Ochoa can draw a Wasteland or a Strip Mine, then things will turn kind of quickly, though. Because if Ochoa goes like, waste your land, maybe you gush, maybe you don't. Either way, it sets you back mana. And then next turn go Crucible, immediately play with Wasteland. He's just that's just a 2-for-1. He's getting a lot of value out of that.
Yeah. Now, at what point does Roland have to be like worried about his life total? If he gets down to like 6 or 8 or what?
I could see even lower, but Roland is getting a lot of value here because Roland can now just start hard casting Ingot Chewers, and that actually does a good job stopping the factory as well.
Yeah, I mean, lucky for Ochoa, he did draw the Dismember. So if Roland does just hard cast a Chewer, then he could Dismember one turn and try to hit him for 4 maybe.
Actually,
well, he would need a land too, but
yeah, depending on what Ochoa draws, I was going to say he could attack with Factory, trade it with Ingot Chewer by pumping it, and then Crucible it back. But because of the Thorn, he's actually going to be 1 mana short of that.
Yeah, he would need to draw a land first, and then he would have to wait a turn to play the Factory.
So Roland didn't get Volcanic with one of the fetch lands. I'm kind of surprised he just didn't want to get all 3 Volcanics into play. At this point, Wasteland's going to get you no matter what.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. But Roland does have a lot of options here. 2 Chewers, Pulverize, Time Walk. What do you think Roland sideboarded out?
If he didn't he sideboarded all the Mental Missteps. If he didn't sideboard,
sure,
and let's see, does he have any Flusterstorms in his deck? I don't think he does. I think the Therapies take those spots. Besides the Mental Missteps, given that he has at least 2 Cabal Therapies, I'd hope he sided out with at least one of the other Cabal Therapies, and then other than that, I don't really know. I mean, maybe he sided out the Sudden Shock, though. I don't think you'd want to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, so he goes after the Sword and Fire and Ice, and Ochoa draws Wasteland. Really good draw.
And right now, Wastelanding is great because Roland can't gush because of the Thorn. So if I'm Webb, I'm slamming Wasteland plus Triskelion and actually looking to be in pretty good spot.
Yeah, and maybe Roland does have 3 Volcanics in his deck, right?
he has 3 volcanics, and he's going to be down to just the 2. In a couple turns, David could end up cutting him off of red entirely.
Yeah, yeah. I think definitely wasteland that volcanic right now, and Ochoa knows what's up. And now you're saying to go for Triskelion?
I like Slamming Trike because it blocks Ingature, first of all. Second of all, if Roland kills it, you can take out the summoning, the Ingature that can attack this turn.
Yep.
And then it gives you time to get Crucible going because all you want to do now is prolong the game. Now that you have Crucible in hand and a Thorn in play in a Wasteland in your graveyard, it makes it really hard for Roland to win a long game.
Yeah. Yeah, this is where like Roland would need something else that we're talking about, like a time vault and like key or something, or just even like a grindstone, just something where he could win. Grindstone Painter Servant, maybe.
Yeah. One of the things about Roland's list too is he doesn't have a basic mountain in the sideboard. A lot of the Delver decks, when they side in red, side in a basic mountain, and Roland is not doing that. And this is a situation where that would have been really really handy. So
yeah, definitely.
You give up a sideboard slot, which is a big cost, but on the other hand, getting to be immune to Wasteland is pretty nice.
In general, maybe to like a newer player, would you advise them to have lands in their sideboard or to not do that?
I really like having the basic mountain in the sideboard, but that's just me. I mean, I played it the vast majority of times. I would say over 90% of the time when I play one of the Pyromancer decks, I have a basic in my sideboard.
Okay.
I think Wasteland is a really big threat. So,
and what about in general? Because I know sometimes people don't like having lands in their sideboard, but sometimes people will have like extra, Cavern of Souls in their sideboard or whatnot. Could be good, could be bad.
That I'm less a fan of. I don't have lands in my sideboard to like up my land count exactly. It's more that I want to be able to have a basic land against the Wasteland decks when you want another color.
Okay.
Huh. So Roland cast Time Walk there. Didn't attack, of course, because it's a 3/3 versus 4/4, but also didn't play a land and didn't play anything else. That was not a very efficient use of Time Walk.
So now he has a Mox Ruby and a Tarn, so he has access up to 6 mana. I mean, he also has Gush, so he could always, kind of refuel on lands.
Well, that's the part that really surprised me about not playing a land last turn is that Gush really rewards you for land drops, and now he's invoking an Ingature. I guess on maybe the Trike, because the Trike is keeping the Ingature at bay. But
he didn't kill Thorn the whole entire game, so I doubt he's going to kill it now, but he might.
No, he's killing the Trike, yeah.
Trike. Okay.
Well, I would assume that Ochoa wants to kill the other Ingature, just leave Roland with no creatures in play. I would not advise killing the evoked Ingature.
I mean, he could do it, but you're right. It wouldn't be the best play. I mean,
then Roland's gonna Gush, I guess.
Is there any world where Ochoa just hits him for 3, or is that just really bad? Because he has this member in his hand that he's not going to do anything with, really, right?
If you subscribe to the theory that there's infinite alternate universes, then I would assume, yes, some of those worlds Ochoa hits him for 3. But in the world we live in, I do not believe that Ochoa hits him for 3.
Okay. And I mean, I guess at this point, Ochoa just wants to try to go for this Wasteland lock, right?
Yeah,
and he
definitely.
wants to go along anyway, so, okay.
Ochoa's not worried about racing here, and the Mishra's factories do a pretty good job of that once the Ingatures are gone, too.
Yeah, that's true.
So now Roland is, I think, feeling the pain of not having gushed last turn, because he could gush if he's going to gush now. Well, it looks like he's just playing the Ruby, but if he were to gush now, then he would be able to replay a land and maybe play some spells. But now he's in a position where gushing doesn't feel as good because he's already got a land to play.
Yeah.
And I think he wants to maybe keep Gush up in case of another Wasteland.
Yeah, everything you said, really smart. So if Ochoa could kind of sculpt his draw, what would he want here? Or does it not even matter?
He would want to draw spells. Not really Black Lotus, honestly. That's not actually that great. Other than that, he's not doing much. Thanks to the keen eye of Randy Bueller here, one of the Volcanics got exiled to Demonic Consultation. I did not realize that. So that's why Roland didn't fetch it earlier, and that means Roland can't alternate cast Pulverize anymore.
Okay. Wait, and does he have any more lands in his deck to get with the Tarn? Maybe that's why he didn't play a Tarn. Maybe he wants to hold it for like.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
He's
Okay.
got three volcanics, two undergrounds, and an island. He's got the two undergrounds in play, one volcanic
Yep.
graveyard, one in exile, one in play, island in play.
Yeah.
So the mystery is solved. I feel a lot better now because I was very confused before, but now it actually makes perfect sense. Roland knows that his Scalding Tarn doesn't get anything. He might as well keep it to brainstorm it back.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. This kind of reminds me of one of those Inquest puzzles where it's like,
Yeah.
what do you do? You know. Okay. So now Ochoa drew Black Lotus, like you said. I think his best line is to get down to this Crucible of Worlds.
I think so. You're not super happy about just playing into a bunch of open mana and a couple cards in hand when Roland hasn't been playing anything, especially since Roland didn't hardcast Ingot Chewer last turn. So I could see Webb waiting on it, but I think my inclination would be to just to play the Crucible and see how that goes.
Yeah. I actually like Ochoa attacking first to see if Roland does anything.
Oh, so Ochoa is less likely to play Crucible now unless he wants to sack the Lotus to play it.
Yeah, he would have to sack the Lotus. So he would play Lotus, pay one for it. I don't know. I think he still might do it.
Yeah, maybe just trying to offer up the factory as bait there, and then
Yeah.
Roland didn't bite. Yeah.
Let's. No,
But
okay, he just passes.
Webb's not someone to give up value. I didn't think he was going to.
Okay. Ooh, strip mine from Roland.
Yeah. That would be a lot better if we didn't know that there's a Crucible lurking in Webb's hand. Apparently, siding a Crucible was just great.
Yeah. I mean, he did this last week too, right? He boarded in the Crucible against Ole.
Who did have Wastelands at least. Roland doesn't have those, so this was a little bit more aggressive of a Crucible.
Yeah.
So Strip Mine is in play. It doesn't particularly change what Webb does. It means that he's less likely to attack with just one factory. He might attack with multiple just to make sure he's getting damage through no matter what. But Webb loves attacking with Mishra's factory as a kind of as your match showed. He just attacked those every turn. That's all he did.
Yeah, but for him to attack, he would have to sacrifice his Lotus, right?
You would have to sack the Lotus now since he didn't draw a land. So
Yeah.
there was a chance that he wanted to play the Crucible first, but it looks like he's just going to revoke. At that point, you might as well revoke Mox Ruby since they have access to deck lists, and he knows that Roland's actually not playing Dak Fate, which is another choice that you don't see very often.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Dak Faden's a really powerful planeswalker and, really good in Vintage just because of the fact that Workshops is really popular. So this is going to be a Gush. Hardcast Gush.
Gush the honest way. Ooh, Treasure Cruise. That's a card.
Yeah, Treasure Cruise could help Roland out a bit.
I think Webb's going to be inclined to play the Crucible now. He knows it's going to resolve because of the Thorn. So you can slam Crucible, and then you can Wasteland the Volcanic, and then, I would be surprised if Webb did not have a count of Roland's Volcanics and know that that's Roland's last Volcanic.
Yeah, so basically Roland has no more red mana besides Black Lotus, correct?
If he draws Black Lotus, he could hardcast Pulverize.
Yeah. That's going to be what Roland's going to be trying to look out for.
And he gets to cast Treasure Cruise, though he's getting attacked for 3 down to 6 here. Honestly, the Mishra's Factories might just do it even if Roland gets to Pulverize here.
Yeah.
Though I guess the Strip Mine plus the Bolt actually takes care of those. So Roland is going to need to Pulverize to get things started.
No, I mean, even if he draws a Lotus, he won't have enough mana to hold up the Bolt, the Strip Mine, and...
Yeah, he wouldn't be able to do it all in the same turn.
Yeah,
which means he doesn't have very much time for it.
Yeah, and he's on 6. He's facing down Lethal.
He's facing down Lethal, has no red sources in his deck except Black Lotus. Has a Strip Mine, so I guess it's not technically lethal in that if you just leave up Strip Mine, you can at least fog one of the factories, even though Crucible means it's just temporary.
Yeah. And Ochoa's definitely going to have a land drop next turn because of the Crucible, unless Roland does end up pulverizing. So it's kind of... I mean, Roland's probably at like a 2%er at this point.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And he's going to get to cast a Treasure Cruise here.
I guess he's going to try to find some treasures.
He's going to try, but I don't think he's going to succeed. He's going to find some Cabal therapies.
Yeah, Cabal Therapy, not very good, like you were saying. There's a Delver, a Null Rod, a Force of Will.
And Norad has some utility against Ochoa, but not in this position. It turns off a Mox Pearl, and that's it. The rest of Ochoa's cards still work.
Yeah, somebody needs to play like a Null Rod Blood Moon deck. That would be good for Vintage.
That is a deck. Ifro played a deck with a lot of those cards. He played a Landstill deck at one point.
Oh, really? Okay.
So Roland chose not to play anything.
Yeah. Why did he play nothing?
He's leaving up Force of Will. He wanted to leave Delver in hand to play Force of Will, and he can't cast. The Scalding Tarn does nothing. He can't cast Lightning Bolt or Pulverize. Norad doesn't do anything. Cabal Therapy doesn't do anything. Roland's hand looks like it's 7 cards on the screen. It's really like 2.
Yeah. I mean, he could cast Cabal Therapy just to see if he got it right. That would be some sense of accomplishment.
That's true. You have to go for the small victories. So David Troll replayed the Wasteland so he could activate both factories. Just going to attack for 6, force Roland to strip mine one of the factories, go to 2, and be facing down factory plus Revoker at 2 life, which is a pretty tough position to be in.
Yeah. All right, so Roland's down to 2. He'll have possibly one final draw here.
And even Lotus doesn't let him hardcast Pulverize. Not that that would save him because of the Mishra's Factory, but he would be a mana short even if that were the case.
Yeah, so it looks like he drew a Scalding Tarn.
He just played the Scalding Tarn from hand just to verify he had nothing to get with it. It's going out in style.
Do you think he'll do the Cabal Therapy? It would be a 2-for-1 here.
Yeah, that's true.
No rod.
That doesn't do anything.
Yeah, doesn't do too much. So it looks like Ochoa's going to move on.
Yep, he's managed. He's started to crawl his way back out from an early loss and is moving on to 2-1.
Yeah, and I mean this really shows what Vintage is all about. It's not about a turn 1 or a turn 2 kill. It's about getting to play the cards that you really love to play and playing a really intense back and forth type game. Because there was a point where we thought Roland was going to win.
It looked solid for Roland, certainly. I mean, the fact that Roland drew a hand of 4 of his sideboard cards and the mana to cast them and then still lost to, I think, one of Webb's mediocre draws kind of shows you that, having just adding a bunch of shatters to your deck doesn't beat this like it didn't used to beat Affinity, right? Did anyone ever lose with Affinity to a deck that just sided a bunch of shatters? That's just not how it worked.
Yeah, no, I remember back in the day, it was like in 2004 at the Pro Tour Kobe, I think it was, people just came with like the Affinity hate deck and they were like, yeah, I'm definitely going to win. But they would still lose.
Yeah, I the same thing happened in 2011 in Nagoya with Tempered Steel. So
Yeah.
these things apparently happen. But that concludes round 3. We've got 2 more matches left to go here. So we're going to cut to some messages and we'll be back in a few.
Okay, bye, LSV.